Where do I begin? Well, I guess that's one way to begin it. Yeah. So we started the Remy route. Everything was kind of relatively the same up until we got to the area where Takumi lives, that encounter with Senna and Kozupi, and apparently Remy lost control of her D-sword. Very reminiscent of Kozupi losing control of her D-sword. Needless to say, this is already possibly one of the darker timelines. I'm not entirely sure which one would be considered darker. I mean, I think still, to this day, right now, the darkest in terms of its themes and all that is the bad ending that I've witnessed where, Takumi was so mentally broken that he created a delusional escape, and the bad guy just won. I'd say that's probably the darkest. I can't really call Kozupi, I can't really call her ending the darkest. It was more just depressing and gory. I would say that one was not really just dark, it was just depressing and fucked up. This is already starting to become pretty fucking dark. Both Senna and Kozupi were dead. They died right before my very eyes, and Remy had been the one to kill them. Right now, she was lying down on the sofa, sleeping. After Kozupi had died, she'd started trembling, let out a scream, and then immediately lost consciousness. I hadn't even been able to stand up for a while from the shock. I'd been scared shitless. My fear had kept building and building, and eventually I couldn't stand to look at Kozupi's bloody corpse any longer. So I got up, carried Remy to my room, and shut us in. She would occasionally let out a pained moan, but no matter how many times I called her name, she wouldn't regain consciousness. So I just sat down, hugged my knees, and waited for Remy to wake up. There wasn't much I could do about my trembling. Senda and Kozupi had just died, after all. Unlike the new-gen victims, they were far from being complete strangers. I knew them, talked to them, spent time with them. Just yesterday, the three of us had eaten crunchy coons together. Senna, Kozupi, and I. When I saw that photo with the three of us in it, I bit my lip. It didn't matter how much I wanted to forget it. That scene ripped straight from a nightmare played again and again in the back of my mind. Kozupi's vivid crimson blood, the slimy, sickly texture of the glistening bone sticking out from her body, her emotionless eyes that had lost all light, and the indescribable fear and sickness I'd felt in the moment where I saw another person cease to be a person. The moment when her slender body had been ripped apart had been burned into my retinas. In that moment, I'd learned how frail people truly were. I felt like I was about to throw up. And if I did end up doing so, that would make it the fourth time I'd puked. What had ended up happening to Senna? This was an 8-story building. Having fallen all the way from the roof, there was no way she'd made it out unscathed. She'd probably... No. Definitely died. The two of them were both dead. I couldn't believe it. It couldn't be real. It had to have been a dream. A nightmare. Yeah, that was the only explanation. Dying in such a horrific way, and if that wasn't already enough, it was Remy who had killed them. I didn't want to believe it. There was no way I could, but it was the truth. I didn't understand why Senna and Kozupi had suddenly turned hostile and tried to attack me. She'd said something about IR2. It probably has something to do with my essay from back whenever I was a kid, but I couldn't care less about that now. After that, Remy had been revealed to be a gigalomaniac. Something that honestly hadn't surprised me too much, but Then, she fought to protect me. She might have gone too far, sure, but there was no way I was going to hold a grudge over that. Still, if things stayed like this, both Remy and I would get caught by the police. Senna's and Kozapi's corpses were just lying around out there. Eventually, someone would find them and notify the police. I couldn't get caught. As if I'd ever let that happen. I could just tell the truth. I hadn't killed anyone. After all, Remy had. And besides, Senna and Kozapi had attacked me first, so that had to count legally as self-defense. I'm not a lawyer. But, you know what? I'm just going to stay quiet. But I was well aware that none of that would work. Back when the crucifixion had happened, I'd almost been named the culprit. There was no doubt in my mind that it would go the exact same way this time. Moreover, I needed Remy. If she didn't exist, if she wasn't here to protect me from the threat of Shogun, I would be completely fucked. So when I'd learned the truth that she was a gigalomaniac, I hadn't been horrified. If anything, I'd welcomed it. She wasn't powerless. She wasn't just a naive high schooler. She was my ally, and one who had even wielded the power to protect me from Shogun. That was why I wanted her to wake up so badly, and sooner rather than later. I'd get her to erase Senna's and Kozapi's corpses with her delusion powers, and once she did that, the police would no longer be able to get us. Nobody had found their bodies yet, right? Holding back my urge to throw up, I looked out the door. Kozapi's bloody corpse was just outside and therefore unlikely to be found, but Senna wasn't. Senna had fallen off of the roof, meaning someone could easily stumble upon what was left of her. It'd be the end if that happened. Seeing how Remy wasn't waking up, I'd have to cover up their bodies somehow. Just the mere prospect terrified me. I didn't even want to look at someone's corpse. And I wasn't even mentioning the fact that I knew them, which made it so much worse. Even so, I desperately shook away my fears, and then I went outside. I had to ensure my and Remy's safety. Sua pops up. Hello! It was already dark out, leaving my surroundings very dim. I didn't even have the moon to help. The clouds were hiding it. Straining my eyes, I looked over to where Kozapi was lying. Huh? But I couldn't find it. I couldn't find Kozapi's tragic corpse. There was still a pool of blood, so I couldn't laugh it off as it was all just a dream plot twist, but her corpse is completely gone. What? Remy subconsciously erased them, or maybe Takumi subconsciously deleted their existence, but more than likely the other idea is because Takumi is probably being watched by Sua and the Nozomi group. They realized what was happening, and they immediately got rid of the bodies. Potentially to make Takumi break, because they still need his code sample. That's why they left the pool of blood there. Got rid of the bodies, then just, Starting to get really confused, I stuck my head over the edge of the roof and peered down at the street below. There was no one there. And Senna's corpse wasn't there either. There was clearly something down there. Something I immediately understood to be a pool of blood, but that was it. No people, no corpse, nobody freaking out, nothing. Where had her corpse gone? The corpse had definitely been there after Remy had lost consciousness, so Remy couldn't have erased her with her gigalomaniac powers, but then who could have... Ayase? No, she was still hospitalized in Yoyogi. Then Shogun? But he was my enemy. There was no way he'd ever do something that would have benefited me. What the hell was going on? Feeling both vaguely anxious and incredibly relieved about the corpse disappearing, I let out a deep sigh. Then, I felt chills on the nape of my neck. I was being watched. It was the usual mysterious gaze. Shogun, Is that you watching me?
僕を見るな。
You know what? That's a possibility. Maybe Shogun did it. I ducked into my room. Oh, no. Not with those eyes. Rimi had gotten up. She was looking around the room with a vacant expression on her face. Guess she'd finally woken up, but what should I say to her? Killing Senna and Kozabi had been a pretty extreme shock to her. Then again, that was bound to happen if he killed someone. It wasn't like PKing in ESO. She also said she didn't mean to, and I was sure that only made it worse. I didn't know what to say at a time like this. So in the end, I couldn't help but say nothing. Rimi looked at me, then tilted her head curiously.
ここどこかな?
Rimi? Oh no, did she regress?
あなたは誰?
Oh no. Rimi was acting strange.
リミどうしちゃったの?
リミって誰だろう?
Oh, she completely broke and regressed. This is probably the Rimi that was subjected to the Nozomi tests that Shogun saved. Oh, fuck.
私かな? 私リミじゃないよ.
Wait, then who are you?
何言ってるんだよ。しっかりしてよ。
私の名前は
Oh, that's right. If memory serves, like, whenever she would undergo extreme stress, and this might be me misremembering, but I vaguely remember that her story detail was whenever she was being experimented on, in order to defend herself, she would basically create separate personalities, and it went through multiple times. I think that's what's happening here.
わかんないや。
嘘でしょ。嘘だよね。
I pressed her for an answer.
本当だよ。
Right when she said that, Rimi jumped into my arms and started clinging to me. She rubbed her cheeks against mine like some spoiled kid wanting attention. Having her so close to me, and so suddenly at that, I started panicking.
あなた誰? 私のお友達かな? きっとそうだよね。
Jesus.
お友達ってね、つまりね、私に親切にしてくれる人のこと。
Christ.
あなたは怒らない? 私、怒られるのやだ。あとね、痛いのもすごくやだな。
Amnesia? Or maybe even some form of age regression? I thought this kind of thing only happened in Eroge. I would have never even dreamed of actually running into a situation like this IRL. But that was only a possibility. The sheer amount Rimi had freaked out when she'd killed Kozapi wasn't normal. And...
ギガロマニアックスとなったものは誰だろうと一度は壊れているんだよ。
Yep. I remembered the late Senna's words. Rimi might have broken once again. She killed her own heart and mind. Suddenly those words came to mind. I couldn't quite remember where, but I had a feeling that someone had told me that before. Ah, that's probably a vestige of Shogun. Or Takumi. If Rimi had killed her own mind from the shock of having killed Kozupi and Senna, and I was talking to an entirely new personality she had created, I could understand why she was acting like a child. DID, dissociative identity disorder, also known as multiple personalities. Yua had accused me of having it. Obviously, I didn't have it, but maybe Rimi was suffering from it now. Well, on the positive, at least this story isn't taking the route of, oh, this character has dissociative identity disorder, but their personality is a known serial killer. Sorry, I had something a little bit in my throat there. Danganronpa related. This was all just speculation, of course. What I did know, though, was that the childlike Rimi in front of me now was nothing like the Rimi I knew. She wasn't the same girl who'd told me she'd stay by my side. The girl whose kindness had enveloped me. She was completely different now.
こんなの
I fell to my knees on the spot. I was overwhelmed with despair. As Rimi clung to me playfully, she peered at my face curiously. Her eyes were so serene, so beautiful. Purity overflowed from them. Purity that I couldn't stare back into. In a way, we were lucky that Senna's and Kozupi's corpses had disappeared, but if Rimi was like this, who was supposed to protect me now? You. You're gonna have to protect yourself now, dude. Good luck! Rimi, not that I knew whether or not to even call her that, had genuinely lost all her memories. Or I suppose you could say that this Rimi didn't have memories at all.
私はリミっていうの？
Yeah?
そうだよ。咲畑リミ。
咲畑リミ。そうなんだ。
From the way she talked, you wouldn't think we were talking about her literal name.
あなたは？お名前なんていうのかな？
This is an interesting situation. I'm worried about how Taku's gonna handle it, but
僕は西条拓実。
having to teach her something so basic, like day one stuff, was just... Thinking about where this was going to lead just left me feeling even worse than before.
西条拓実。
Also, am I the only one getting a feeling like this music reminds me of kind of AI, the Somnium Files? Like, I could hear this song playing while you're in a somnium.
タクだね。
And she immediately refers to me as Taku. It was the same. Her nickname for me was the same.
ねえねえタク。あのね、私ね、手がベタベタしてるの。
Uh-oh. The dried blood on her hands clung to her skin. The dark red discoloration on her was Kozupi's blood, or at least it should have been. Her corpse had vanished, but her blood still remained. We should probably get that cleaned.
ベトベト。やだな。
Rimi looked pretty sad as she stared at her hands. I was reminded of Kozupi's smile and was hit with a horrible ache in my chest. Trying my best to hold myself together, I got a wet towel ready for her.
ほら、手出して。
When I told her that, Rimi timidly held out both of her hands. Using the towel, I started cleaning the blood off of them. Every time I glanced at it, the previously white towel got redder and redder. To make sure I got it all off, I had to scrub kind of hard. As I wiped away the blood, making sure to get even between her fingers, Rimi laughed cheerfully. She must have had no idea why she had blood on her hands. Well, wasn't she fucking acting carefree? You know what, clean them yourself. Why should I even have to babysit you? But there was no way I could actually say that. Rimi had tried her best to protect me, and because of that, regardless of whether or not it had been intentional, she'd killed someone, and then her heart and mind had broken completely. So I couldn't just leave her to fend for herself. After all, I was also responsible for her being like this. At least you're taking responsibility.
ほら、綺麗になったよ。
ありがとう。ピカピカだ。私の手。すっきりしたよ。
She took my hands, intertwined her fingers with mine, and then innocently shook them up and down. She seemed so happy. It was like she was a little kid. For some reason, her smile left me feeling wistful.
ねえ、リミ。君は僕を守ってくれる？
Taku.
守る？何を？
僕を。
私ね、よくわかんない。でもね、タコは私のお友達だから私に親切にしてくれるよね。だからね、私タコがいてくれてよかったよ。
Christ. I'm glad I left this as its own episode. Good God. It was no use. There was no point talking to her anymore. The Rimi who was supposed to protect me wasn't there anymore. I hung my head. Rimi wasn't supposed to be here. Where was her house? She needed to get home. I thought of reaching out to her family, but I couldn't find anything among her stuff with her contact information. If I went to school, the teachers there would probably most likely know their address. Her address. The problem was, it was already fairly late, so I probably wouldn't be able to get in to ask. Actually, now that I think about it, I didn't really know much about Rimi. Where did she live? How big was her family? When was her birthday? What was her favorite food? I didn't know anything about her. And because of that, there was nothing I could do for her.
タク、タク。
Rimi called my name as she pulled on the hem of my shirt.
ねえねえタク。私ね、お腹ペコペコ。
What time was it? It was already dark outside, and also dinner time. Unfortunately, I didn't have any spare food here. I'd have to go buy something.
何が食べたい？
Had she also forgotten about what food to do to her memory loss? Did she not know what different kinds of foods there were? What they tasted like?
そうだ。ね、私お蕎麦が食べたい。
You leave me out of this. You leave me the fuck out of this.
お蕎麦？
What?
お蕎麦好き。
Thank you. I appreciate that.
好きなの？
好き。
なんで？食べたことあるの？
Me still being shocked, I named myself Sobata and I didn't even know that noodles were a thing.
食べたこと。ないかも。でもね、お蕎麦は好きだよ。
What was going on? Was she starting to regain her memories? Or was her previous self-sense of taste the only thing she remembered? If she got her memories back, I'd be saved. For the time being, I had to go to the supermarket to buy some soba.
リミ、ここで待ってて。 絶対外に出ちゃダメだ。Bishi.
Bishi. I tentatively struck the pose the previous Rimi had done all the time. I put one hand up against my head as if I was saluting her. Maybe this would make Rimi remember. That was my train of thought at least, but...
石？何？かっこいいね。
He's trying. She had no idea what I was doing. Her eyes were sparkling with curiosity, not recognition, so incredibly embarrassed, I bolted out of the room. Can I just say, I'm loving this shift here. It's actually pretty damn good. On the way to the supermarket, I checked to see if the police were around or not. Just as I thought, Sena and Kozupi's corpses had disappeared. If there were any police around, then it was possible that there had been witnesses, but if there weren't, then that would mean no one had found them. In other words, we might have had some time before we were found out. Now, of course, I wasn't just wary of the police, but Shogun too. He could show up completely out of nowhere at any time, so I paid extremely close attention to any shadows where he could have been lurking in. Thankfully, I didn't feel God's gaze at the moment, but even then, I still didn't want to go out at night. The darkness scared me. And when I walked through the deepest parts of that darkness, I could faintly see the scene of the dead Kozupi and Sena start to form. Their bodies, mutilated and disfigured, slowly took shape. I quickly averted my eyes and hurried to the supermarket, keeping my eyes trained on my feet. Probably for the best, keep your head down. Once I got back to my base, I got the portable stove and started boiling the water for the soba. My container didn't exactly have any form of ventilation, and there was flammable shit everywhere, so it was honestly pretty dangerous. Regardless, I went ahead and tossed the soba into the pot. Instant noodles, of course. Rimi was staring at the noodles with a spark of curiosity in her eyes.
お蕎麦ってこうやって作るんだね。
Yeah? Kozupi's pool of blood was still there. It was practically all dried up now, and since it was nighttime, it just looked like some weird black stain. I broke down all the empty cardboard boxes I'd piled up and set them over the top of it. I knew it wouldn't solve the problem, but I still didn't want to see it if I could help it.
たく溺れそうだよ。
When I heard her say that, I went back to check the stove. It was boiling pretty intensely, and it was on the brink of overflowing. But instead of doing anything about it, she just kept saying, "Whoa!"
火を消して。
Rimi tilted her head, then turned the dial on the stove the wrong way.
わあ、売れたよ。すごい。
いや、すごいじゃないでしょ。
I frantically pushed Rimi aside and turned off the burner. There was hot water everywhere. It really shouldn't have mattered. As long as it was edible, she shouldn't have cared too much about how it tasted or its texture. So I took the pot, drained the water from it, and immediately rinsed the soba noodles. Though it was worth noting that I'd only done so because the instructions told me to. Not because I was some master soba chef. No, I'm the master soba chef.
冷やしとあったかいのとどっちがいい？
I plopped the noodles into a bowl and poured in the base I'd bought as well. All I had for toppings was some green onion. I chopped it up to make a decent garnish, and then it was ready to go. I took Rimi back to my room in a hurry. I'd leave the cleaning for tomorrow when it was bright outside. But right now, I wanted to spend as little time as possibly outside. especially since there was still the faint smell of blood out there. It felt as if Senna and Kozupi could show up even now. They'd be drenched in blood, and then they started walking toward me like zombies. Sure, that was more based in the cult than reality, but it still scared me nonetheless.
ねたく食べていい？食べていい？
It was pretty clear that Rimi didn't have any of the intense worries I had. Actually, maybe it was precisely because of those things that she'd changed into an entirely new personality, in order to completely erase the memory of having killed people.
どうぞ。
はい、いただきます。
She then grabbed the chopsticks I had given her. She was holding them like they were a fork, though. And instead of using them, she stuck her mouth on the edge of the bowl and started slurping it up directly. Okay, yeah, I don't care what anyone says. That's how a lolly eats. TYVM. Oh, thank you very much. She must have forgotten how to hold chopsticks correctly. She'd also forgotten how soba was made and how to turn off a simple stove, and yet she remembered that it was polite to thank people for making stuff for you. Maybe that meant that her understanding of the world around her had regressed?
食べられないよ。
Probably too hot.
え？
食べられない。
Rimi was getting frustrated at her own inability to properly eat the soba. And I mean, considering how she was trying to go about it, of course she wouldn't be able to.
食べさせて。
What?
なんと。
Was she for real? She was asking me to feed her? I felt like I was her babysitter at this point. Or perhaps a dad. But having the daughter the same age as me? Oh god, I didn't know if I could handle that.
たく。
Pretty sure that's not even possible unless we're talking time travel. She pleaded with her puppy dog eyes, and since I couldn't really say no to those, I let out a sigh and gave in.
ほら。あんして。
Rimi took out the soba I was holding out to her in... Rimi took the soba I was holding out to her in her mouth, then started chewing it with a smile on her face. She seemed to really like it.
おいしいよ。
それはいいよかった。
Suddenly, a thought crossed my mind. Oh god, no. A laid-back, relaxing life with a 3D girl. That was definitely what I was looking for. A life with no overly dramatic eroge-esque plot points. Not having to worry about the heroine's emotional baggage, not having to worry about having feelings for each other yet being too afraid to speak up, and not having to worry about getting dragged into a murder case. A life that you wouldn't find in books or video games, and yet I had a feeling that was what I really wanted. And that very life was actually unfolding right before my very eyes. And not only that, but Rimi was here with me too. You're currently in a situation, Taku, that you don't get to have that luxury. I'm sorry, but you need to recognize that that luxury, you can't have that now. Being honest with myself, Rimi was cute. She'd also said she would protect me, and I too wanted to stay with her, forever if I could. But this was all fake. A lie. This life wouldn't last. And Rimi wasn't Rimi. Our time would be far too short-lived, far too fleeting. The thought of it made me feel sad, wistful, and empty.
戻ってきてよ。リミ、本当に戻ってくれ。
I couldn't help but whisper those words.
メールだよ。ボケなす。
Shit. I was taken by surprise. I'd heard Seraton's voice come from my PC. I just received an email from someone. Was it from Shogun? I had a bad feeling about this. This couldn't be good. I didn't want to look.
僕を見るな。
I felt the gaze. Someone was looking at me. It felt even more evident than usual. I looked around me, but there was no one besides me and Rimi in this room. My hand had stopped, and because of that, Rimi was fighting hard to try and wrestle the soba into her mouth. She wasn't looking at me, which meant that there was no one else it could have possibly been. I didn't even need to ask, whose eyes are those eyes? Groaning, I headed for the PC and checked my inbox. Awaken! I'd had only received one email, and the sender was Shogun.
くそくそ
What was he plotting now? Was he going to kidnap Nanami for real this time instead of just faking it? Or maybe he was finally going to come and kill me directly once and for all? The fear made all my hair stand on end. The chills on the nape of my neck grew even stronger. I didn't feel any good, and my head was starting to hurt somewhat. Don't look at me. With trembling fingers, I clicked the mouse and opened the email.
あれ
There was nothing written in it. It was only the subject line, which read, Awaken. There was nothing written in the body. Awaken? What did he mean by that? Was he telling me to awaken as a gigalomaniac? You had to be fucking kidding me. I had a feeling he'd said something similar the first time we'd met.
バカにして僕を怯えさせてそんなに楽しいか
I was angry, but at the same time, I wanted to fend off the fear lurking deep inside me. I hit the keyboard hard with my hands. Static came from the speakers. Had I clicked something by accident?
目覚めてもう時間がない
Oh? I heard something. Mixed in with all that static, I'd heard something. I'd hurriedly checked my PC. The MP3 player wasn't running, and there weren't any videos playing in my browser. I thought maybe Shogun's email had included some kind of virus, but there were no files attached to it.
時間がないんだ
Again. I'd heard it again. It was getting hard to breathe. Drops of sweat ran down my forehead. Oh, I could just turn off the sound. If I did that, I'd stop hearing this extremely weird static. I opened the sound settings in the bottom right corner with the mouse. Then I checked the option to mute everything in the volume mixer. Once I did that, I wouldn't hear anything. I wouldn't have to listen to that static, nor anything resembling a voice within the static. I was extremely tired. Freaked out. But of course I was. It had only been 2 hours since 2 people I knew had died right in front of me. Not to mention the weird stuff I'd seen at the hospital when I'd gone to visit Ayase, or the strange calls from Nanami. So, I had to just be mishearing something amid the static.
目覚めて
A voice.
時間がないんだ
Was coming from the speaker.
もうすぐサードメルトが起き
I'd clearly heard it. It was him. It had been Shogun's voice. The same voice that had talked to me at Scramble Crossing.
なんでだよミュートにしたはずだろ
タク、サードメルトって何？
Oh, she couldn't even hear that. Rimi, acting just as she had been for the past couple of hours, tilted her head as she looked at me with innocent eyes. I came up close to her, grabbed her by the shoulders, and shook them. Because she heard it too.
リミ頼むよしっかりしてよ
痛いよ。
言ってくれ。僕を守るって言ってくれよ。僕は一人じゃ耐えられない。このままじゃ殺される。
痛くしないで。
僕は君を責めないから。君がいてくれないと困るんだ。だから
痛いのやだ。
Tears trickled down her face. I was scaring her. Every couple seconds, her shoulders trembled. I slowly let go of her.
あの無用、目を覚まし。
The third melt! The floor started shaking violently. An earthquake? It was bigger than the last one. I was struck with a violent ringing in my ears. It was such an intensely shrill resonant sound, my head felt like it was about to burst open. It felt like my ears were being pierced by thousands upon thousands of needles, as though my brain was being stirred into mush by a blender. And then... I was hit by an enormous impact. And a blinding light dyed my vision completely white. Didn't realize hitting the thumbs... Okay, so I'm using a controller to kind of keep track of this, so I'm not constantly, like, having my wrist on the desk. So, use the mouse. So, apparently, me touching the, joystick? The right joystick? Makes it move. Did not know that. I learned something new. I was awash with an elusive feeling of being immersed in lukewarm water. The waves gently rocked me back and forth as I drifted along its surface. As I slowly opened my eyes, a vibrant blue sky spread out before me. It feels almost like I could fall into it. It was a rather strange sky. The sun was nowhere to be seen. Even though I was supposed to be in my room. Even though it was supposed to be nighttime. When could have I possibly gone outside? When could it have possibly turned to day? With the last earthquake, I had been out for more than an hour. Maybe this time I'd been unconscious for the entire night, I thought to myself. I remembered the earthquake's tremendous impact. Yet another elusive feeling hit me. Like the tremors were resonating with the very blood coursing through my veins, threatening to burst open from the inside. Maybe this was heaven? Maybe I died in that earthquake. Heaven, huh? There was no way an otaku freak like me would go to heaven. I wasn't even mentioning how I haven't even been able to save my own little sister. How I'd been the worst possible brother to her. How I'd made Rimi kill Senna and Kozupi. Hell would be a far more fitting place for someone like me. Although, obviously, I'd choose heaven if I could. My body didn't feel quite right. I was being overwhelmed by a sensation of walking on top of a fluffy cloud. I couldn't quite understand it. But regardless of how I felt, I forced myself to get up. The feeling of being rocked by the waves hadn't simply been my imagination after all. This was a world with a never-ending surface of crystal clear water. A world where, no matter where I looked, blue filled my view. And I had been right in the middle of it, lying down. Where was I? Was this really heaven? But I felt like I'd seen this scenery before.
あの空はどこにあるの?
A voice resounded within my mind. A voice which rose from the depths of my memories. Right. I remembered now. I had seen it in a dream before. Remy had been there. I talked to her. She looked up at the blue sky. Her face, clearly one of holding back tears. Was I seeing the same dream as I had back then? But no matter where I looked, there was no one other than me. There was no one here. Not even Remy. It was far too reposeful. Remy? I tried calling her name, but my words were entirely mute. And yet, without even a sound, they created ripples across the calm surface of water. Are you there? Sound was a series of vibrations, and those vibrations in turn created waves. Among those waves, just like I had been a few moments ago, there was someone lying down. I stood up. My field of view expanded. The one drifting along the waves was Remy. She was so unbelievably pale. She appeared as if she was dead. Her eyes were closed and both of her hands were resting gently on her chest. And she simply stayed that way, facing up to the sky, not even moving a single inch. Remy, wake up! Even though I called out to her, she didn't react. She was dead. I knew that for certain. But it wasn't just her. The world itself was dead. And so I just stood there, not knowing what to do. Right at that very moment, Remy's prone body gradually sank beneath the surface of water. As soon as I realized what was happening, she was already completely submerged. How was I standing on top of water at all, I wondered. Curious, I fixed my gaze below the water's surface. Beyond it, there was only darkness. The sky was so bright, and yet, even though the water was so clear, below it there was only an eternal darkness that seemed to swallow all. And Remy, still lying on her back, was slowly sinking farther and farther into its depths. I had to go after her. I needed to wake her up. But as soon as that thought crossed my mind, even though I had been able to stand on water until then, all support suddenly disappeared out from under me. I sank. My body grew heavier with each passing second. It was like I was underwater, but it wasn't as though I couldn't breathe. The water was very warm, too. I just wanted to drift within this comfortable sensation for all eternity. That was the way it made me feel. If I had to give an example, rather than ocean water, it was more like amniotic fluid. This very well might have been how a fetus felt inside its mother's womb. I thought the darkness continued forever, but in truth, there was a bottom to it. It was so dark I couldn't even see my feet. I simply felt an odd, sticky sensation on my soles. I stood in the middle of the darkness. When I looked up, I found I could no longer see the surface. That blue sky, too, had been veiled completely by the darkness. The sole source of light was a single ray that descended down from above like a thin thread. Much like a spotlight would, it pointed to a single place. And yet, unlike a spotlight, there was nothing beneath it to be illuminated, and it only lit up a meaningless spot. Nervously, I stepped into the light. It was ever so faint and gentle, but the moment I bathed in it, my chest began to ache. What was this sensation? It felt almost as if I could cry at a moment's notice, as if my heart itself was being rended. That was the sensation that overtook me. Where could Remy be right now after seeing all the way down here? Relying on the faint light source alone, I made my way out from beneath the spot of light, then searched the darkness. Soon my toes hit something soft and yielding. I kneeled down and this time tried touching it with my hand. What I felt was so cold, it was capable of freezing my very fingertips. Little by little, my eyes adjusted to the darkness, and before long, I realized something. I was touching a person. A person lying collapsed on the ground. Remy. Wake up. I tried shaking her. Remy, wake up. But there was no reaction. She wasn't breathing. Taking her feeble hand, I measured her pulse. She was dead. She had no pulse whatsoever. Dismayed, I strained my eyes to examine the surrounding darkness, only to find that she wasn't the only one. All of the personalities. Countless other Rimis are collapsed on the ground, almost as if this place were a burial ground. And every single one of them was dead. This was a graveyard. The graveyard of her heart. That was how it felt to me. Suddenly, countless bubbles sprang forth before my eyes, and within each and every one of them, I could see different visions being displayed. An instinctive realization came to me, and I knew then that these were Rimi's dead memories.